Hello, my name is Stephen Kirsting, and in this episode of Your Shot, My Way, we have an image submitted by Julia, and I'm going to call this a glamour photo due to the very flat light with very little shadow on the face. So this is going to get a glamour soft type of edit. The first thing I notice when I look at this image is I find the hand a little bit problematic. Um, it almost looks like she's rubbing a sore neck. And a key to posing the hand is if it's going to be a caress, it should be fingertips, maybe the first 3 fingers or all 4, with a slight curve to the hand, as if gently touching. This looks more like a rubbing. And with this lighting, we have some pretty significant highlights on the edge of the hand, and it's a bit blotchy there. Looking at this image closely, we have some blotchiness to the skin, pink areas where we'd rather not have them. Some pretty strong veins there in the eyes. We can address some stray hairs in that area, a little bit of a blotchiness up here, and some unevenness in color here where the makeup didn't go into the eyelashes. And we can look at addressing all of those. Focus wise, I don't have the camera settings for this image, but it was obviously taken with a rather wide aperture. The depth of field is very shallow. Just starting to lose focus on the tip of the nose. The camera near eye is in sharp focus, which is good. The camera far eye is a little soft for me, and that's just personal choice, and I would prefer to have more in focus and then remove the focus or sharpness in post, as opposed to not having enough and trying to recreate it. If we look at this image, there really isn't anything in this image that we need a shallow depth of field or this shallow of a depth of field for to obscure. There's no background that we need to obscure and provide our separation. So I would have used a smaller aperture, greater depth of field for getting this eye more in focus. And then if I later chose for it not to be, I could remove some of that. I can't put it back in very well, although we'll look at adding a little bit of sharpness to that eye as we go through this edit. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a virtual copy using a command quote to create a virtual copy, and we're going to start with the eye here, and we're going to remove these veins. To do that, we're going to get an adjustment brush, and we're going to set the clarity very low. We're going to set the saturation very low, and we're going to paint this area in. Let's see what we got there. Not a lot. Flow. Take this area as well. Get rid of some of that. And let's see, take the exposure up a little bit on this area. Clarity down. This takes the sharpness out of it. Okay. And let's remove noise. Address this area up in here. So I'm not eliminating it entirely. I'm just toning it down a lot, because eyes do have veins. If they didn't have any, it would probably look a little bit odd. Alright, and let's look between the before and after. And we've addressed it. We have not turned the eye brilliant white or anything like that. We've left most of the tonality there. Let's go ahead and we'll take the highlights down just a little bit. Keep it from being overly brightened. Now you notice my brush is oversized. That doesn't really matter too much because I have auto masking on down here. Only areas that are similar to the parts I paint over with the crosshair of the brush are going to be affected. So it's selecting that color and tonality that's under the crosshair, and no matter how large my brush is, only those areas will get adjusted. Okay, we've got little speculars here and there. We'll address those with the clone tool. Take this very small tool here. Boy, twitchy. Alright, don't like that result. We'll move that up to there where we want it. Down a little bit. Move that up. Over. Alright, that's that one. And while we're in here, we'll go ahead and address the hairs, stray hairs. Go ahead and feather this quite a bit. We're in the healing mode, which tends to work pretty well here. Just work in smaller sections. And then if we get a result we don't like, we just move that around. That. We'll get rid of this little bit of hair there. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Yeah, let's actually get rid of a little bit more up here. Take care of this one as well. That's a very bad choice. Alright, something like that looks pretty good to me. Alright, so I've taken care of the hair. It looks a little blotchy, doesn't it? It looks okay close up. Alright, we could address that as well. And we can look at some of the other areas here. Now we have the highlights and things, blotchy skin, and looks like I've created a little bit there. All those things to address with this photo yet. But I'm going to go ahead and make another virtual copy because I think most of those will be more easily and better addressed in Photoshop than they are in Lightroom. So I'm going to make a copy and just work on this a little bit in Lightroom to give you an idea of what we can do to address some of these things in Lightroom. All right, we can of course take the clone tool again and fix this area there. So we can get rid of that in the heal mode, and we can adjust the opacity after the fact, how much it feathers after the fact. Alright, so we can take care of that, and we can take care of some skin tones and stuff like that to a certain extent. And to do that, we're going to take the brush tool and we're going to fix our saturation, and we're going to have the clarity set low, and we're going to set a color sample. So to do that, I'm going to click on the color sampler, drag off onto the skin, and you can see the sampler window. The sample point is moving around. So I'm going to look for a skin tone that's similar to overpaint with. Alright, and actually before I do that, let's go in and we're going to set white balance first. And I don't like using Lightroom for white balance because it doesn't actually set white balance. If I pick a spot that should be black, and I click on this, right, the RGB levels are not 0. They're not black. All right. What Lightroom does is it equalizes the RGB colors. It doesn't go and set black or white. If we now sample the white area, we get a different result, and yet my white is not white. All right, it's 78.4, 78.5, and 77.2 in percents. So that's somewhere down around 225, 230. By using the white balance dropper, I get this result with the white balance on white. I get that result if I use white balance on the black, and neither one is actually black or white, the sampled areas. So I don't like Lightroom that much. It's very relative. What Lightroom does is looks to average something instead of setting it to absolute numbers. So white balance is always a personal preference, but the problem with Lightroom is you can't tell exactly what is correct colors with the white balance dropper. All right, where I can do that in Photoshop more accurately. All right, if we look at these two colors, let's see, File, Edit, Redo, let's go back. All right, so we have, let's take a look at the original. There's our original color tone, a little greenish in the tones. If we go in here and we look at our white, you can see it's all kind of greenish tinged. It's a blue-green. Right. So the white balance is off a bit. If we go to the next image, that's a bit red, in my opinion. Still not in love with it. All right, I like that. I think that's a nice warmer look. Just taking most of the green out. Okay, so we'll go with that white balance. Personal taste at this point. Okay, now we'll go back to our brush tool. We still have the color. Let's take a look close. Let's make sure it's still a good color. And let's look for something that's kind of warmer. All right, we'll use that. And then we can paint in here to get rid of some of our highlights. We can get rid of some of the pinks. Fade those areas back in. Touch those up. We can color this area here. We can go and we're going to go down to the hue saturation. Skip out of here for a minute and get rid of some of these pinks. So I'm going to use this sampling tool, highlight one of the purpler areas here, and it's saying red, And then I'm going to drag, whoop, that's hue. I don't want to do that. Command Z. I'm going to go to saturation. I'm going to pull that saturation down. And because I'm sampling a specific spot, it's moving red and orange together and affecting that more than the rest. Okay, so -20 and -17 on saturation. And the red's a little further down than the orange. All right, let's take a look how that has affected our lips, because they are red. We don't really want to affect the lips so much. Okay, so there's the original image after our edits. Red's slightly affected, and I can go in here and I can undo. So that's without the red saturation shift. That's with it. So without and with. So we've not harmed the lips too much. So we're doing pretty good there. Zoom in here, take a look at this. And I'm not sure this color is working anymore. So I'm going to get rid of this. And we're going to select a different color. And let's go with something a little peachier, a little tanner. All right, go with that. Address these areas. Tone that down. Tone that down. Color in some of this area. All right. Let's go down to this portion. The hand. And we'll paint in there as well. Let's go make this brush larger. Paint that in. See if we can get rid of some of this. Make sure we have a new brush for this. All right. So we're going to tone down some of those highlights. Blend them in a little bit better. I'm going to go over here with the highlight control and bring that down a little bit. Try to balance that out. All right. And we can go and get a new brush, and we can go with a reduction of sharpness, a reduction of noise, and we can address some of these skin issues. Blend those out. Get rid of the color. Easiest way to get rid of the color is to drag off somewhere to where it turns to an X in the box. Okay. And get rid of some of that blotchiness and skin issues. Zoom down. Go back to the brush again. We'll address under the eye. Okay. Address some of that. That area a little more. And we can go back and forth with all of this and try to get it to blend out better, and erasing, adding, etc. Go back to our hue saturation because I still have a little bit too much pink in my opinion. So we're going to go ahead and pull some of that red down at this point. I'm going to take a look in here on the nose. Try and get rid of more of that pink. Let's go ahead and take the luminance up on these. That'll make them seem less saturated as well. It's affecting the face overall. So we don't want that so much. Bring the red up alone. Oops. Oops. Just bring the red up. All right. I think that's pretty good. And then we can go down here, one last adjustment, and we'll reset all these effects by double clicking on the effect. I want to bring sharpness up. I'm going to paint here, try to bring this eye up a little bit with sharpness. And it's getting noisier. Okay, and at this point, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and restore some of the red to the lips by selecting a red color in there. We can leave the sharpening set. We'll go ahead and brush some red back into the lips that we took out earlier. We don't have to be too worried about it. We can refine that. Simply go over here and resample. We can set the red that we like. After the fact, we can adjust and have it increase highlights for a little more contrast. Adjust that back and forth. Sharpness, whatever we want, we can adjust those after the fact and restore the lips back to where they were. Alright, we're going to go to the other copy. This is the copy after I have cloned out the stray hairs and brushed the veins in the eyes. We're going to open this one in Photoshop because I believe we can do a better job with a lot of these issues in Photoshop. So we're going to open it by hitting Command E. We're going to edit a copy with adjustments, and we're going to wait for that to open. Okay. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create two copies. I'm going to use Command J on the keyboard to create two copies. The top copy I'm going to make invisible. The lower copy I'm going to blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And zoom into 100%. And I want to adjust this blur level just to the point where the skin textures disappear. Not all of them, but most of them. Something right around there, too. Okay. I'm going to hit Command G to put that in a group, and we will call this color. Okay, I'm going to make the upper level visible. We're going to take this and we're going to go to Image, Apply Image, and we're going to select Layer 1, the color layer. We're going to hit Subtract, and it automatically selects 2 and 128, and that's what you want. All right, I'm going to hit that, and that is essentially a high pass filter. And you can do the same if you have like Photoshop Essentials. You can use a Gaussian blur layer instead. It's just a little, you have to come up with the numbers, the amount of high pass applied yourself. I'm going to apply this in linear light mode, and this becomes our skin texture. So it's taken everything that was in the original image visible, but not visible in the color layer because we blurred it out, and applied it to this layer. So it is our texture, our detail. So we're going to go ahead and group that, and we'll call that texture. So now I have these split into separate areas. And when I'm working in Photoshop, I use a Wacom tablet, and the only thing I have set for pen pressure is the flow. Alright, so even though it's set 100% here, under my brush settings, I have the transfer set to pen pressure for flow. So the lighter I press, the less gets transferred onto the image, and the harder I press, more gets transferred onto the image. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the lasso tool, and we're going to make sure we have a feather set to that. And we're going to get rid of some of these color issues. This. And we're going to do that by applying a blur. Let's make sure we have the right color layer selected. Alright, now we'll go to blur. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm looking for something that's going to take those colors and blend them together to get rid of some of that patchiness. Right? Deselect that area. So we look at it. This is without the Gaussian blur, and with the blur. It just smooths that out. Right? And we can do that with all these skin areas. We can go down here, we can select this area, and I can hit Command F to redo the blur, and I can just repeatedly do that until that patch goes away. And I can do that in all these areas. Just hit Command F till it goes away, smooths out, and let's see, I'm going to take this area. I might have selected too much there. We've got to watch the eyebrow. And that's looking pretty good. Okay. Go ahead and we will look up here on the forehead. We have this area. And I'm just hitting Command F, get rid of that blotchiness. Command D to deselect. Okay. Got all that addressed. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add another layer here. Off the tablet just about. And we're going to select a brush, so B for brush tool. I'm going to hit Command Option and drag. There's my hardness, left and right for size. We're going to make this smaller and softer. And we're going to select a color in this area here. And we'll kind of paint some of that back in. Right. Get some of that color in where it was missing. Right. Fix this area here. We will zoom around, take care of this area here. Take care of that area. Okay, it looks like I painted there somehow, so what we'll do is we'll mask it. And use our brush tool with the default colors to get rid of that. Don't know where that came from. And let's go up to the eyebrow, and we're going to get rid of some of that from the eyebrow. And hold Control Alt, we'll make our brush smaller. Get rid of that off that eyebrow there, where we didn't want it. Okay. So that fills some color in. We're going to put a hue saturation layer here, and we're going to get rid of the pinks with this. So I'm going to select the colors, reds. I'm I'm going to use the dropper tool to select the color I want to get rid of. Right in there. I'm going to take the saturation down, lighten this up, and we will then invert the mask with Command I, and we will paint that in with our brush tool. So brush, check our size, make it large, and we will just paint that in those areas. Make it a little smaller here. Right, so we can get rid of some of that pink. I'm not going to get rid of all of it, and I'm only going to remove it from selected areas. Alright, I'm going to add another hue saturation layer. I'm going to select colorize, select the tone that's close to the skin, something like that. Invert that, and I, brush tool. Alright, and we can paint some of that color back in those areas where we might want some. And I can always go back and change the hue of that later. We'll go ahead and I'm going to dress the hand with this. Looking a little orange there. We'll fix that. And we can, of course, mask that in and out. And we can also change the density of our mask to bring it up everywhere a little more evenly, so it blends a little better. Alright, let's take a look. Fit that in there. Okay, let's go back to our color layer, zoom in on the hair there, take the lasso tool, undo that, Command Z, that's too coarse. Okay, and I'm going to hit the blur for that area, fix that patchiness. Okay, and let's see where we're at. Last thing I'm going to do here with color is I'm going to add a levels adjustment here. I'm just going to look at these two. Alright, so we've set white and black, and there will actually be white and black. There's black, 3 zeros, there's white, 3 255s. I can go in here, I don't like whites to be 255 generally, I want them about 245. And we can look at this. So this is the correct color of this image. the red's the right red, the skin tones are the right skin tones, etc., etc. So the levels tool in Photoshop allows me to see what's true. And if this looks bad on your monitor, the colors look way off, it's really, really pink or something like that, to me it's the makeup's a little orangey. The makeup's a little bit on the orange side. Now it could be the color of the light as well, the light source. But this is what the colors of the scene actually were. And if it doesn't look right on your monitor, then you probably have a color calibration issue. Now, just because this is right doesn't mean it's necessarily what we want. And it's not actually. Let's go ahead and turn everything back on. Yeah, that works pretty good for me. A little on the orange side. A little bit on the orange side. So I can undo. We'll just go with a black setting. Because as I said, it's not necessarily right. I don't like that selection. That's a little warmer than the previous. It's a little yellow, more yellow than I get when I set the whites to true white. Right. And it has really knocked the background down. So we're going to take this area, drag this, set the gamma, midpoint slider, bring up the background, pull it back down. And I'm going to put a mask on this. Invert the mask, and we're going to paint in that white balance where we want to see it. And maybe that's a little too bright, so we'll take opacity down a little bit. Here we can deal with some of these areas that look noisy. Alright, because these are in the texture layer. If I turn those off, they go away. So I can deal with those. Either I can put a mask on here and I can brush out some of those areas, make our brush small. And I can take out some of those areas. I can reduce the detail in that area, and pretty much any place I want. I can sit there and address the skin texture without removing it entirely. Like unlike the clarity brush in Lightroom, I can't edit these things selectively. Right, and I can also go in here with the stamp tool. Let's make sure current layer only is selected, and I can select skin tone, texture, and I can paint it in to other areas. See where that's at. I can paint it into these other areas where I want more texture. Okay, we're going to go in here. We're going to hit the brush tool. We're going to take out some of that texture under the eye. That area there. Alright, make this brush larger. Knock down some of this. areas. Going for that smoother beauty type skin tone look. So knock this down just a hair. Knock this area down quite a bit. And we'll look at the chin here. That brush smaller. All right, and let's see where we have that. A little bit too much brightness there, so I'm going to mask that out a little bit. All right, and we can continue working on the details that way. All right, a little bit of a dark area right in here. Not real happy with. Let's take a look at that. And we can use a layer. We'll just sample a color from nearby. We can paint that in. Blend that in a little nicer. Make this brush smaller. Take care of that little bit of a dark area there. And maybe we'll make it larger and we'll paint a little bit, darken this up a little warmer. There, a little warmer. There. Okay, touch that up as well. All right, see what we've got. Yeah, oh, looks like I made a mess down here. I brushed over that. Not a big deal. We can just take the eraser and remove that from that collar there. All right, and we'll go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. Shift Option Command E to paste all the visible components. And go ahead and we're going to look at the far eye. To do that, we're going to use a high pass filter. Filter Other. High pass. I'm going to use a. Actually, let's do this. What we're going to do is I'm going to change this mode to linear light first. That's going to allow me to see exactly what I'm doing. Filter, Other, High Pass, and set the level. That's going to set the sharpness for that far eye. Right about there. I like. Right. I'm going to hit an inverted mask, so I'm going to hold Alt. When I click the layer mask, it'll make a black mask, and we will paint in that using white. Make our brush smaller, and we'll bring this up. A bit. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. And let's zoom in and take care of these catch lights. I'm going to use the clone tool, and I'm going to come over here to my clone options, and I'm going to flip the source. I'll change my size. I'll select over on this side, and I'm going to paint it in. Give me a new layer. current and below for this. We'll select here, and then we'll paint here. So even if I go into the orange is in the right place. If I go out into the black is in the right place. Okay, I'll do the same thing over here. Select right about there. Clone those in. Right. I'll have to fix this area here. I'm just going to use a brush tool, make it default black, and I'll make it small. I'll paint this in. Unfortunately, it's not quite the right size or shape, so I'm going to have to kind of fudge it a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to take curves layer. We're going to bring up an area and invert the mask with Command I. Use another curves layer, break down the exposure a little bit, invert that with Command I, and then we're going to take our brush. We're going to just bring them up. Since my light is my catch light that I'm using is upper left, the light's going to, the cornea is a curved dome, a clear dome. So when the light enters here, it hits the cornea back in this area. All right, so this area we would want lighter. And then this area above, we want a little darker. Create a little more dynamics to this. Let's take a look at that curve. Pull it up like that. All right. And that's a little heavy for me. So we're going to take a little bit of that out. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Let's disable this. I'll hold shift and hit the key. All right. I think we could use a little bit of that here on our lips. So we're going to brush a little bit of those highlights in. A little bit of those highlights in on the lips. Okay. I think that's a pretty good edit. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that little line underneath her lip. So create a new layer. We'll move that to the top. I'm going to use the spot healing brush. Sample all layers. Let's make that brush a little softer. A lot softer. And we'll fill that area in. Don't like that. Make the brush smaller. And we're going to go ahead and get the brush, and we'll sample area nearby. Paint that in just to smooth it out a little bit. Let's go down here to the texture area. We will brush out some of that texture. Leaving most of it, just softening up the stronger areas. All right. So there's our finished edits. We're going to go ahead and save that out. And we'll look at these in Lightroom. So there's our Photoshop edits. Image as imported. And the image as edited in Lightroom. Now obviously I could have continued here in Lightroom and taken out the catch lights. It would have been more finicky and more difficult in the line, and spent as much time on it as I wanted to here in Lightroom to refine this. So Lightroom, so original, Lightroom, pretty nice. We have still some blotchiness, and I can't get rid of the blotchiness without getting rid of texture simultaneously, and so Photoshop's the better tool for that. And there's the Photoshop edits, and I'm pretty happy with the outcome on this image. So until next time, when I will see you again, Stephen Kirsting, and I hope you have found this helpful.